right, so welcome back to our discussion for the Kriya Yoga Solstice Retreat. We're going to be talking about the mechanics of meditation, and the focus is going to be on the processes as laid out by Patanjali. As I'm letting people into the Zoom call, I just want to express how much I appreciate you being here. I particularly enjoy seeing so many returning students and returning participants. One of the more difficult things of teaching, especially over many years, is that as you do so, people come and they go. And I saw this with Mr. Davis, with his retreats and the students who showed up when I was first being there the first year I was there, and then they'd be there for a few years and they'd disappear, and then they just kept cycling, and there'd be a few that would be there all the time. And I've been able to read a few unreleased letters between Yogananda and some of his students, and also between some of Yogananda's students. And they talk about the same thing. People come and they go. And Mr. Davis would always tell me, don't get caught up in that. He says, continue to do your duty to teach and let people enjoy their own path. Because we all have our own karma, and some karmas are a bit stronger to keep you focused on a path, to keep you focused in a tradition. And some karmas are a little weaker, which means you kind of float in and you float out. But I've really appreciated over these years, not only with the in-person retreats, but also with these online retreats, seeing the commitment and the dedication of the students, many of the same students every year, because this takes a long time. And Mr. Davis talked about this as well, that a lot of people, they come to the retreats, or they might spend a year or two with him, and they think they've learned everything. And it is true that when you get down to it, the practices of yoga and the mechanics of the process, they're really not that complicated. So you don't have to talk about all these different things over many decades. There's an essential process to it. You just have to keep doing that thing. And in my experience with Mr. Davis, most of the important things, yes, I learned in the first maybe 2 to 5 years. But just well, personally, I imagine this. I imagine, what would I have done if I thought I got it all and then I just went off on my own? And maybe I don't have enough trust in myself, but there is definitely something important about staying engaged in the process, repeating what has been learned, reapplying what has been learned over many years. So those of you who've been around for a long time, I actually just saw someone log in who was part of my original Vedic astrology apprenticeship program, which was a long time ago, 10 years ago. And she's still showing up for our Kriya Yoga session. So anyway, thank you all for being here. Those of you who've been here for a long time, those of you who are new, I just really appreciate your participation in this process, because this is extremely meaningful to me. And I'm sure it's extremely meaningful to you. And it's nice to see the continued interest. So I just wanted to take a moment to say that. All right. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about the mechanics of meditation, but I'm going to focus a lot on the Yoga Sutras. And when we think about the mechanics of meditation, we can't separate it from why we are meditating. We are meditating so that we can learn to access, recognize, remember the stillness, the fullness, the presence, which is at the core of our being. That is essentially what we are doing. And that means that meditation is not simply a relaxation technique. And today, which is perfectly fine and acceptable in yoga studios, in meditation classes, it's often taught simply as a meditation, as a relaxation technique. But remember, it's a deep return to what you essentially are, the timeless essence of your being. So Patanjali doesn't offer meditation as just an option. It's essentially the heart of yoga itself. And we're going to start at the beginning. Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. This is a definition, and it's telling you that what yoga is that it is a cessation, an ending of the fluctuations of the mind, of the fluctuations of your field of consciousness, essentially. And this is what our meditation practice is directing us towards. I was reading a quote. I don't remember which yogi it was, but the yogi was talking to their student, and the yogi was essentially saying that this process isn't about necessarily a path. It's about letting go of, dissolving the personage, the person who thinks they need to walk a path. And so you have to walk the path to dissolve that. But that's very important. We have to remember that, because the essence of yoga, when you get to the core of it, it is a letting go. It is a relaxing into really everything that you know. Because if you can't do that, if you're saying, I want to hold on to this unique personality, I want to hold on to these specific things, well, you're not going to experience timelessness and freedom because you're holding on to something. So the path of yoga, or the process of yoga as a meditative path, it is actually not what it's sold as in our modern culture. But it's a way of completely letting go, a way of complete surrender. And that's why in the eight limbs of yoga, we have the yamas and niyamas, and Ishvara Pranidhana is an extremely important aspect of all of that. So anyway, this first sutra, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, this is the cornerstone of the entire method. And the idea of nirodha, this cessation, this stopping, this restraint, this letting go, this is not a violent suppression. It's not, you're not forcing anything. The beauty of Patanjali's system, if you follow it, is that it seamlessly, gracefully leads you from one experience to another, which kind of pulls you closer and closer into this experience of the essence of your being. Later on in the Yoga Sutras, it describes this process like a farmer raising a grate and allowing water to flow in and irrigate the field. That the farmer is not forcing the water, pushing the water into the field to irrigate it. The farmer is just lifting the gate and letting the water flow. So all of these processes in the Yoga Sutras, in our Kriya Yoga practice, they're just a step-by-step way of lifting a gate, letting the water flow. Okay, walk a few more feet, lift another gate, let the water flow. You're just moving from one stage to the next. You're moving from accessing a very gross, obvious experience in life into accessing subtler and subtler experiences of life. Now, meditation itself, let's get into, I don't know if we want to call it a definition, but a working model of what meditation is. So in the Yoga Sutras, we have these 8 limbs. I'm sure you're familiar with them. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. And meditation is essentially the 7th limb, Dhyana. This is the 7th limb. But we have to remember it doesn't occur in isolation. And the beauty of the Yoga Sutras, as I've been seeing it, feeling it, experiencing it more over these last 5 years or so, is this symmetry and this flow that it has. For example, on Patreon, we're doing a class right now on the yamas and niyamas, and I'm calling it the chain of enlightenment. Chain as in like a metal chain where there's links in a chain. And if you look at the yamas and niyamas, one chain link leads to another chain link, which goes on until you finally get to Ishvara Pranidhana. You follow the links to get to the deeper stages. And if you don't follow the links, if you don't start at the beginning, you're not really going to be able to stabilize that deeper stage of tapas, that deeper stage of samadhi, and that deeper stage of Ishvara Pranidhana. Well, the same is true with the yamas and the niyamas. And we're going to have another layer of that coming up here in a minute, which I find really interesting. The yamas and niyamas and the 8 limbs of yoga, you can't just go to dhyana meditation. You can't do it. You can try, and you can tap into you can tap into experiences that are kind of close to it, but you can't just jump to dhyana meditation. And Patanjali divides the processes of yoga into 2 sections. There's the outer section, and then there's the inner section. Outer is what you can do here in the world, what you can do alternate nostril breathing, physically touching your nose. You can express truth to someone physically. You can talk about it. You can say it. You can get involved in an asana, a posture. You can actively withdraw your senses into the core of the essence of your being. You can do these things in the world. These are the outer aspects of yoga. But there's another part of yoga, the inner aspects, which no one else can see, no one else can know. You only know it by going within. So no one knows when you are experiencing dharana. No one knows when you're experiencing dhyana. No one knows when you're experiencing samadhi. Only you, because it's an internal state. Now, you might be able to say, and it will be slightly accurate, that, well, we can measure these things with brain scans. Sure, you can. But what about the yogi who's not actually identified with the body? This is where it gets a little tricky and metaphysical. But if a person's brain isn't functioning, but the yogi, the essence of that person, is present, it's not going to show up in a brain scan. So there are these inner limbs, these inner aspects of yoga, which in no way can actually be defined outwardly. But the only way you are able to access these inner limbs is by following the steps, the first 5 steps, the first 5 steps. Once the outer framework, the outer structure becomes stabilized, now you can go within. Now you can look into yourself, for lack of a better word. And even Kriya Yoga, as we know it popularly, meaning as it's been shared through the culture at the present moment, that's still really only focusing on the first 5 limbs of yoga. But you have to do that. That's the beautiful part about it. By practicing Kriya Yoga as we know it from Paramahansa Yogananda and the teachers of the tradition, the breath awareness, the Kriya Pranayama, all of this is preparing you for Pratyahara, so then that you can then access the inner states, the inner limbs of yoga. So meditation, we have to remember, we can do techniques, we can do pranayama, we can do the things which are setting us up for success, but those are setting us up for success to go within. And we can only really say we are meditating when we're doing the work on the inside, when it has nothing to do with the external alternate nostril breathing, the circulation of the Kriya Pranayama, all these things. Sri Yukteswar talks about this in some of his writings, so does Lahiri Mahashaya, but it's complicated and it's subtle, so it hasn't really been included in a lot of what's available to us right now. It's hard to understand as well, but we can get there, and that's the beautiful part about all of this. So meditation, dhyana, is the 7th limb. It's the 7th limb. And in the Yoga Sutras, chapter 3, verse 1, this definition of moving into the inner limbs, it's desha bandhas chittasya dharana, which means fixing the mind to one place, or anchoring the chitta, your field of consciousness, in one place, keeping it in one place. fixing the mind in one place on a single object. Now, that can be the breath, a mantra, an image, or even a concept like compassion. But you're not really getting into those inner stages until you can do this kind of focus internally, inwardly. Meditation is also defined in the second sutra of chapter 3 in the Yoga Sutras as flow of awareness towards an object. So we choose where we're directing our attention, and then there is an uninterrupted flow of that awareness. I heard another yogi talk one time. He was asked, well, how do we know, or how long do we have to hold our attention on a point or in a fixed position in order to say that, yes, we've experienced dhyana, we've experienced meditation? And he said, you have to be able to hold your attention on your chosen object for 12 full breaths. I thought, oh, well, that's easy, right? Well, it sounds easy because it's only 12 breaths. But the amount of darting around that your mind can do in the course of 1 to 3 breaths is pretty amazing. I mean, it's amazing. Like if you actually just observe it and you don't get aggravated about it or upset about it, you can be amazed by it. And the neat thing is once you become amazed by how the distractions can arise, it's like they don't become so troublesome anymore because you just think it's neat that the mind can do that. And anyway, so 12 full breaths. Okay. Well, it's harder than you think, but it's also very doable, right? And it's a milestone. It's something that you can choose, that rather than having to look at your timer or just wonder how long you've been focusing on a particular thing. Well, from this point forward, you know that your goal to access some moments of true dhyana, true meditation, well, your goal is to be able to hold your awareness on a point of focus for 12 breaths. And you start small. You just try it for 1 breath. And eventually you build up. So you treat it as though it's a very attainable situation, a very attainable situation. So keep that in mind, 12 breaths. And then whenever you're meditating, you do your meditation techniques to direct your chitta, your consciousness. And we need to do those techniques. And once you get a feel for the techniques that you like, that you're really able to sink your awareness into, well, the next step would be, all right, so now I'm going to start working towards these 12 breaths. And eventually one day you'll do it. And you'll recognize in that moment you have accessed this inner limb of dhyana, of meditation. And everything else that you've done, practicing the yamas and niyamas, being able to sit still, asana, cycling through the pranayamas that you know to help stabilize the mind and to help keep the energies flowing smoothly in the body without distraction or obstruction. All of that was part of the structure that allowed you to experience this definition of meditation as an uninterrupted flow of awareness towards an object. And then the question comes up, all right, what about samadhi? Well, I have other videos and talks and podcasts and descriptions on samadhi. I talked about it a lot during the retreat last year, the solstice retreat last year. But how can you know when your dhyana turns into samadhi? Well, this yogi had an answer for that too. He said, when you can hold your attention for 144 breaths, 12 times 12. So when you are able to maintain your focus on your chosen point for 144 breaths, you're going to know that you've experienced samadhi. I guarantee you're going to know it. So again, 144. Well, that seems like a lot. And compared to how scattered we are with our ways of focusing, yeah, it probably is. But it's not. Ultimately, in the course of a lifetime, that is not that much. If people can memorize the Yoga Sutras, if people can memorize this, that, and the other, if people can focus on a particular thing for an extended amount of time, well, they can also work towards holding their awareness wherever it's important to them for 144 breaths. And then they'll experience a quality of samadhi with that. The trouble is this. Our modern lives were distracted. Our modern lives are fractured. We've got notifications coming over here. We've got to manage this work situation. We have to travel over there. We have this child complaining about that. There's all kinds of distractions. And in order for us to be able to do this well, you have to stop letting your life get hijacked. You have to stop letting your life be hijacked by every passing impulse. You have to get off social media for a bit, or have a specific amount of time that you're going to do that. I recently completed another podcast on how we overthink away, how we overthink and ruin the sacred. And I'm not sure if I actually coined a phrase or not, but I hope so, because I like coining phrases. I think it's fun. But I thought, when I get on Facebook, or I get on YouTube, or I get on, maybe not YouTube so much, because when I'm on YouTube, I'm actually looking for a specific bit of knowledge, like a lecture or a talk. But when I get on Instagram, what do I see? Now, most of the followers that I have and people that I follow, they're posting nice things, clever little spiritual memes and so on. Mr. Davis did not think that was useful. In one of his older books on how to be a Kriya Yoga teacher and minister, he kind of comes out and says, don't waste your time posting cute little spiritual memes on Facebook or Instagram. I don't know if he said Instagram, but you know what I mean. Don't waste your time doing that. Don't find all the quotes you love by Jesus or Yogananda or Ramana Maharshi and just stick them up there because you love them. That's just wasting your time. And what do? We have what I was trying to coin the term of spiritual doom scrolling. Spiritual doom scrolling. Well, what is spiritual doom scrolling? Well, it's just another distraction. You think it's cute. Oh, here's a nice meme by Paramahansa Yogananda. Oh, that's nice. Here's a nice meme by Ramana Maharshi. Oh, here's a little video on this, that, and the other about compassion and so on. Well, what if you stopped doing that? And what if you just got out a good old-fashioned book and you read some of it? And instead of trying to share it with others to let everyone else know that that's what you're doing, or thinking that you're inspiring others by posting these things online, you're not. You're just distracting them a bit more. And I'm slightly guilty of it too. I really hate interacting on social media, but I know I have to be somewhat visible. So I try to put as benign or somewhat helpful things up as possible, but I don't like it. If I didn't have to do it, I wouldn't do it. And maybe I don't. Maybe I'm just confused and I need to let go of that. But pick up a book, the Bhagavad Gita, the Yoga Sutras, and rather than allowing yourself to get pulled away into all these distractions of electronic things, read, listen to something that can be helpful for you, and try to integrate that over the course of your day, over the course of several weeks until you get it. And if you do that, you're going to start developing this muscle of authentic daily engagement with your practice. And that's the only way that you're going to learn to feel deeply, to know deeply what Yogananda experienced, what Ramana Maharshi experienced, what my understanding of what Roy Eugene Davis experienced. You have to be authentically engaged in it. But anyway, let's try to bring this back down to a level of the mechanics of meditation that we can apply well. All right. So we talked about that we have to fix our mind or fix our field of consciousness in one point, in one place. We have to develop an uninterrupted flow of attention towards that. And then when your experience is such that what you've been contemplating, what you've been meditating on is the only thing that exists in your awareness, even if it's just for a flash, then you're beginning to recognize what samadhi is. And it's cultivated through time. It's cultivated through time. So, right now, if you're not able to concentrate or if you're not able to experience samadhi, it's because the habits and the patterns of your field of consciousness are scattered and weak. They're scattered and they're weak, which means you have to learn to start bringing it closer and closer into a coherent pattern, into a coherent pattern. And once you see that by choosing to focus on something important to you, choosing to do that and intending to do that, it becomes more accessible to you. And you can do this in your everyday life, not just in meditation to help the process. You can choose to think and feel and behave a certain way. Now that's challenging because remember, we are used to feeling like you are a small individual with your personality, and the personality you have is vindicated in being that way. Like it's important that your personality is that way. Well, if you get to the heart of yoga, it is absolutely not important how your personality is. It's neat and it's fun to talk about and to act like, oh, we're all unique individuals. We have to love everyone's uniqueness and these kinds of things. Well, it's true. When we're engaged in the world and we're living a normal life as all normal humans need to be living, yes, to be kind, to be accepting of everyone's unique talents, absolutely. But I'm not talking about normal life. I'm talking about the purpose of yoga. And the purpose of yoga does not care about your personality. From the point of view of a realized yogi, when they see that person's life and the other person's life and the person down the street, when they see all these people's lives, what do they see? They see a collection of habits. That's what they see. One person thinks their habits are more important than the others. Their beliefs, they see a collection of beliefs. This is why it's not necessarily such a great idea to start turning your yoga practice into something political or turning your spirituality into something political, because the deep process of yoga and spirituality is not concerned with politics, because politics is what? It's a belief system. And on one side, you have people who absolutely believe one thing. And on the other side, you have a system that absolutely believes that thing. And if you've ever noticed, both sides think they're right. And they see the world from their vantage point, and everything that they say, do, see, touch, taste proves to them that they're right. And so a yogi steps back, sees that pattern, but takes it a step further and just doesn't look at it in the realm of politics. It looks at it in the realm of every habit or behavior that anyone can have. And so what we have to do is start recognizing the things we like, the things we don't like. It's habit. That's it. And for yoga to work, it's not to develop more things in your life that you like. It's not to pray for all these good things to happen. It's to step back from that and to recognize that you are the seer. You are the presence which illuminates the belief systems, which observes these likes and these dislikes. Why is it so important in the yoga system that we rise above likes and dislikes? It's in there. It says it very specifically. Why is it that vairagya, this capacity for discernment, and discipline and detachment, why is it so important? Because we're learning to let go of the mind. We're learning to let go of these preferences. We're essentially rising above the human condition. And I've been listening to a lot of really interesting discussions lately and reading a lot of interesting books. Really good stuff. Actually, not a whole lot, maybe one or two, the same ones I keep reading. But there was a description. The person was describing a section from chapter 4 of the Yoga Sutras, which is a very subtle, nuanced chapter. It's very hard to kind of get your mind behind. But it was talking about these changes from one form to another form. And that in any situation, there's no loss of energy, there's no loss of matter. And we know this from science. There's just a change from one state to another state. For example, if you have a cup and it's full of water, well, if you want to empty that cup, you have to pour the water out, and then the water flows maybe into another cup. So what you have there flows into something else, and that's what creates the change. The same is true for our spiritual practice. You say you want to know what Sri Yukteswar knows. You want to know what an enlightened sage knows. You want to know what it's like to experience samadhi. Well, what do you have to do? You can't stay the way you are. You can't be you, right? If you're not able to experience samadhi right now, that means you can't stay who you are right now and experience samadhi, because that whole combination of ideas and collection of habits doesn't support it. So you have to change. And as you've heard me talk about before with Sri Yukteswar's Holy Science, he describes this evolution of consciousness from rocks, minerals, to plants, to animals, to humans, to devas, and then to the sannyasin, the supremely free. But in each of those steps, the human can't stay an animal. The animal field of consciousness has to change and transform to become a human. The same is true from moving from the human consciousness to the deva consciousness. Deva consciousness is what? Full of light, full of sattva, full of a sense of connection to higher realities. It's not concerned with all of your little petty ideas, habits, and belief systems. It's not. It's concerned with light, love, truth, peacefulness, expansion, abundance, which you can't have if you're clinging to certain definitions. So what we have to do, and we're all on this path right now because you're here with me and we're talking about it, and you haven't logged off yet, which means you're at least somewhat interested, or you haven't been offended by this idea, this cold, harsh reality of yoga. But what you have to do is recognize you are a human being. It took a long time for you to access this capacity to think, to engage free will, to have reason, to be able to express the love of being human, because it can be a beautiful state. But we're here now, which means you've got some kind of interest to keep going. You're not content with just going to all the family reunions all the time. You're not content with just having more babies or having another business. You're not content with just learning one more song. You're not content with just perpetuating this cycle of being human. Something's happened, something's changed, something's shifted within you. You might still like it a whole lot because you haven't maybe changed that much, but deep down inside, some more sattva has percolated into your field of consciousness, and you're beginning to entertain the notion it's time to transform. And some of you are actively transforming very quickly. But what does that mean? That means that you have to start emptying out the human and start taking that material of the human, the energy, the matter, and start pouring it into the field of consciousness of being a deva, of being a being of light. You have to start doing that. And you are, through the practice of yoga, through the cultivation of the yamas and niyamas. That's the essential process of shifting from the small-minded human, defined by their personalities, by their quirks, their idiosyncrasies, to someone who's going to be free, who's going to be able to smile in the face of difficulty, who's going to be able to express compassion when it needs to be there, who's going to be able to be full of joy and virtue, right? These are all important things. But you have to recognize that just like the caterpillar needs to change and become the butterfly, the process of yoga, tapas, the burning, the discipline, the trying, the confusion of not understanding specific spiritual topics or ideas, but then trying really hard and working through it and finding experts to help you get there until it makes sense. And then you have the breakthroughs. That is the pouring of your material of a human being, the energy of a human being, changing it and pouring it into the mold or the blueprint of the next stage, which is the angelic stage, the Deva stage, and so on. So this is essentially what we're doing with this whole process. And this is what the mechanics of meditation leads us towards. And in order to do that, we have to cultivate one-pointedness, ekagrata, one-pointedness. And you do that in your meditation, but you can do it in other ways too. Simply by deciding that right now, as we're having this discussion, you're just listening to me talk. You are focusing on the information. You're absorbing your attention into it. Anytime you listen to a lecture, read a book, or study, you are developing that muscle. Anytime you're driving down the road and you're just deciding, I'm just going to focus on driving, not all the worrying, not all the thinking, not all the planning, just driving. Or when you do need to plan, you're just planning. Or when you're working on a project, you're just working on the project. These things cultivate this capacity for one-pointedness, such that when you sit down to meditate, you can train yourself more intently through this repetition to say, I am going to focus on my breath and my breath alone. And I know that in order to experience dhyana meditation, I have to be able to only feel and focus on my breath for 12 rounds of breathing. And so you practice, and maybe you only make it to 3 rounds. You say, all right, well, let's start over. And you breathe some more. And each day you keep working towards that. Just like people who go to the gym who work towards more weights, they do it slowly. People who are learning a very complex, intricate song, they learn a little piece at a time. They just learn a little piece at a time until they have it. This is what we have to do. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Kriya Yoga podcast. To learn more about Kriya Yoga meditation, you can visit us at kriyayogaonline.com, where you can find information about current book releases, online classes, and in-person retreats throughout the year. If you're interested in supporting this podcast, visit us at the Kriya Yoga Online Patreon community at patreon.com/Kriya Yoga.
Om Gam Ganapataye